Welcome to Digital Literacy, a guide to using technology and journalism. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about audio recording, and we'll talk about audio recording for both multimedia production and also a little bit for just straight reporting. It's really important to understand the power of audio in multimedia storytelling, and so getting good quality audio for audio slideshows, videos, podcasts, things like that is very, very important. Audiences have shown time and time again that if you have good audio and some weak photographs, they will pay attention, but if you have weak audio and great photographs or great video in part of a package, they'll tend to wander away. Audio tends to drive everything. So laid out in front of me are three different types of audio recorders that we've used here at the Grady College. On the left we have an Olympus WS series recorders, and these were the first audio recorders that we started purchasing and recommending that students pick up. They cost someplace between $75 and $100 when they first came out. Decent audio quality. What we really liked about them was on the top part here you can see there's a place to plug in both an external microphone and a set of headphones so that you can listen to what you're recording. Recorded all digital, obviously, and then when you were done you could just pop them apart. This one's a little bit stiff. And you had a USB port on the bottom of this, and that allowed you to just drag your files over onto your computer and start editing. Well, almost. These recorders recorded in what was called a WMA, or a Windows Media Audio format, and that format was very, very difficult to edit. So you had to run it through a different conversion program so that you could get it into the audio editor of choice that we have, which is Audacity. So we've started moving away from these, and in the fall of 2012 we've started recommending that students pick up their own digital recorder. Now, the two recorders that I have remaining here are two of the top recommendations that we have. Here in the center is what's called the Zoom H1 HandyRecorder, and next to it is its big brother, the Zoom H2. So I'm going to start with the H2, and then we're going to spend most of the time with the H1. Both of these have very, very good built-in microphones. The Olympus microphone was not great. That's one of the reasons we strongly recommended getting an external recorder. Now, the Zoom H2 runs between $175 and $200, and this is the first generation of it. There's an H2N that looks very different, but functionally is very similar. Nice quality build on this. It's all plastic, but it's pretty durable. The nice thing about the H2 over the H1 is this actually has four microphones built into it, so two that face the front and two that will face the back. So if you're in a situation where you need to record something at a conference table, it comes with a little tripod like this that just screws into the bottom. And what this will allow you to do is drop this in the center of a table, and it can record on both sides if you activate all four sets of microphones. But beyond that, it's a fairly standard recorder. Uses two AA batteries that go into the back of it here. Battery life is pretty good. You'll get a couple hours worth of recording time out of them. And it uses an SD, or secure digital memory card, to do your recording. So you can carry extra memory cards with you, and that's a little finicky to get out sometimes. But it's just a standard memory card there, and that allows you to just pop that out, plug it into your computer, and drag your files over. Now, the advantage to both of these is that instead of using a WMA file format, what you get is either a WAV format or an MP3. And the WAV format is an uncompressed, meaning very, very high quality audio file. An MP3 file is a compressed file. It's not quite as good. My recommendation on both of these is set them to the WAV modes and leave them there. You'll be much, much happier, and they're a lot easier to edit. So a couple of other functions built into this. On the left-hand side of this, you'll see this does allow you to plug in a power supply if you want. There's a jack here for headphones, and then volume controls to raise and lower that. And on the other side, you have an external microphone in jack, and this is pretty handy in case you want to keep the recorder with you and then run a microphone out someplace else. There's a gain switch there, and then this is just a standard USB jack here. So you can either pop this out, pop the memory card out, and plug that in, or you can just connect a USB cable to this and it'll show up as a drive and you can move your files over. One of the other big advantages to this is if you're going to do any podcasting or you want to do some high quality screen capture recordings, this, when you plug it in, will show up as a microphone on a Mac or a Windows machine. So you can use this as a nice high quality mic. You can mount this next to your computer, put it on your desk, something like that, and it's pretty good. Now, there's a couple of things that I'm not crazy about with this. This one, the menu structure is fairly complex, so I've never been really, really happy with it. It takes some extra button pushing on it, so it's not my favorite thing. One of the little quirks to it is that you actually have to press the record button twice once this comes up. Once to get it ready to go, and then a second time to actually get it to run, which I find to be a little cumbersome, and from time to time I found that I've forgotten to hit it the second time. But the audio quality once you get it up and running is really, really nice. But the recorder that I really want to talk about is this H1 recorder here. And this one Price-wise, this is under $100. The Zoom H2 runs from $175 to $200, depending upon where the markets are at any point in time. It's a much more compact one. It'll fit easily in a pocket. You can carry it in your camera bag or your satchel or whatever it is that you're carrying your stuff around in. It's pretty durable. It's got some nice protection here around the two microphones that are up here, and they're set up in a cross pattern. So it is a stereo recorder, so you'll get audio from two different directions on this, and it's a pretty nice quality. So I just want to run around the sides of this real quick. We'll start over here on the left side, and once again we've got a headphone jack here and volume controls for that, and it's really important that you be monitoring sound. So I'm going to take a brief moment here to talk about this. If you don't pay attention to the sound that you're recording, you're going to end up with some surprises. So I always recommend when you're recording audio that you make sure you've got some sort of headphones plugged in. Now, most folks are going to go with the simple solution of just a set of earbuds, something along the lines like this, and they're easy to carry and audio quality is going to be pretty good. The problem with these is that you're going to get a lot of sound that comes around them, so you're not always going to be exactly sure of what it is that you're recording. So it's kind of goofy looking and kind of difficult to work with, but I would recommend getting a nice set of over-the-ear headphones. These ones are fairly inexpensive. They're made by Nady, and I think they're about $15 or $20, and you can go to any store and you can try on different ones. But what these will do is, good ones will block out all of the sound coming from outside of the recorder so that all you hear is what it is that you're recording. And again, it's really critical that you have very, very high audio quality when you're doing these recordings. So we'll flip around to the other side of this recorder and go back to some of the buttons here. Down here we have the on-off switch. It's marked hold, and then you can just pull it down, and that'll fire it up. Actually, it's pull and hold on this. It says hi, and then checks the card, make sure that everything's ready to go. You've got a delete button here, some play controls here, input levels, and a line in. So once again, you can put a microphone into this, and then again, you can control the audio levels here. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This one again has a USB jack here, so you can plug it in to transfer your files. And this one, instead of working off of a secure digital card, it works off of what's called a micro SD card, which is a very, very small sort of a chip thing. And in order to get that plugged into a computer, it comes with a little adapter here. And you can see this is the size of the chip down here. I never use this. I just tend to plug it in using that USB port on the side there, and that makes life a whole lot easier. I've almost always got that cable somewhere nearby. It's just a standard USB cable. So that's a pretty handy thing to do. And on the back side here, we've got a battery compartment, and you'll notice that I've put a little piece of black gaffer's tape here. I've actually got two, one there and one there. And the reason for that is I found that this battery compartment tends to creak a little bit while I'm holding it. And just by putting a little bit of tape there, you could use some masking tape or some scotch tape or something like that. It's just going to tighten up that connection there. Once again, you've got a 1/4-20 tripod thread here. This is a standard tripod thread, and you can buy little kits if you go poking around, and so you can get a little tripod like this. This allows you to mount this on here, and then you can point it at something, at a conference table or something like that. One other thing that you can get in a kit is a big foam piece like this that fits over the top of it, and this is actually a wind shield on it. And what it'll do is, if you're in a windy situation, that'll cut down some of the sound of the wind and makes it look a little funny. So good to have. Probably not going to use it a ton on there. There's three switches on the back of this that I want you to pay attention to, though. Up at the top, you've got something called a low-cut filter, and I usually have that off. That low-cut filter is designed to cut sort of wind noise. So if you're in a slightly breezy situation, you might want to flip that on, and it's going to take out some of that sort of little rumble that you'll pick up in the background sometimes as you're recording. The disadvantage to that is any low tones, the deeper tones in somebody's voice, are going to get clipped off, so you want to watch out for that. The middle switch is called auto level, and I have this set to off right now. These higher end recorders like this allow you to manually set the recording level. So if you're in a quiet situation, you can boost up the volume so that you get a good recording. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And if you're in a loud situation, you can cut it down. It's really important for me to control that audio level, because if I throw that onto the auto setting, what'll happen is if somebody starts to talk a little bit quieter, instead of picking up sort of the emotion and the feeling of that, it's going to boost the volume up so that it sounds exactly the same as when they were talking normally. So I want to leave that off and set my audio levels manually, which we'll do in a moment. And then the other switch that's on here is the recording format. And so this one has the ability to use either WAV formats or MP3s. And my recommendation again is going to be a WAV format. That's going to give you the highest quality audio, and it's going to be the easiest audio file to edit and play back. Now, when we get into audio editing in the next lesson, when we're done, we're generally going to export as an MP3, and that MP3 again is a compressed format, so we want to be careful about not using that too much. All right, so I'm going to hold this up here, and hopefully the glare isn't going to be too bad. But we've got a couple of things that are set here. It's telling me how much total time I have remaining on here. So this is a 2 gigabyte card, and I don't have anything on it, so you're saying I'm getting just over 3 hours worth of recording time. Got a battery indicator in the upper left-hand corner. These digits here are the sample and bit rates. 44 kilohertz at 16 bits is a fairly standard, and a little difficult to see in there, I think, but you can see that it's telling you that it's on a WAV format as well. So to get recording, all you're going to do is push the red button. Now on the left-hand side, you're going to see there are these meters here, and those meters are bouncing around a little bit as I'm talking. And they start down here at about -40 and go up to 0. What I try and aim for is the -6. What I want to do is set my audio level so that I'm peaking out at about -6. And if you look at where those audio levels are now, it's just below -12. So what I can do is come over here to this input level on the side, and by pushing this up a little bit and then keep talking, I'm going to raise that level up to, let's say, 71, and let's see how it looks now. Now I'm peaking out, still not quite there, so I'm going to go up a little bit more. Hitting the wrong button. And I'll just keep talking here, and now I'm peaking out at about -6 dBs. Now that gives me a little bit of what's called headroom, and what that means is if I set this too high and I start crashing into those zeros, so if I just crank this thing all the way up to 100, which I think is where it tops out, and then keep talking, what'll end up happening is that I'll get distortion. And that's bad. It'll sound a little garbly at the high end of this, so I want to keep that so that it's peaking out around -6. It's really difficult to get it set so that you can peak out perfectly at 0. So give yourself a little bit of headroom, and then you can boost that a little bit later on. So every time you're going to do a recording, you're going to want to go in there and manually set those levels. So that's a really important sort of thing to do. Now, again, the microphones that are built in here are pretty good. So those are going to make you pretty happy for most of your recordings. If you're just doing notes for a story, this is going to be fabulous. They're going to be really, really good quality, nicely controllable. But in some situations, you're going to want a different type of audio, particularly if you're doing a multimedia piece and you're going to be doing a longer interview. So there's a couple of different things that you can plug into this. Again, you've got this microphone jack on the side here, so we might as well take advantage of it. So I've got 2 other types of microphones that I might recommend that you pick up. The first is what's called a lavalier microphone, and this is a fairly short cable one. This is only about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet, and this is sort of the standard clip-on microphone that you would see being used in television broadcasts and things like that. This one is made by Olympus. It's about $20. It's a fairly short cable, but what this will allow you to do is you can clip this onto somebody, and the closer you can get the audio to your source, the better the quality of the sound is going to be. So again, the closer that you can get your microphone to the source of your audio, the better the quality is going to be. So you always want to try and get as close as possible. That's why at a news conference you see all the television guys run up and they put a microphone on the podium because they want to get as close as possible. If you're at a great distance from your source, from your audio source, you're going to start picking up noise that's in between. As you get closer to the source of your audio, you'll start dropping that background noise out. So this is really handy. Now, that's great if you're only interviewing one person, but if you're, say, doing a city council meeting, you want to be able to record bits and pieces. What I'd recommend doing is getting a stick microphone, and there's lots of different ones out there. This one is one that I picked up at Radio Shack fairly cheap on a clearance one day. I had to get a little adapter to plug it in on the other side here, and this one came with a fairly lengthy cable, which I like. The audio quality out of this is pretty good. This was originally, I think, about a $70 microphone, and I got a deal on it for about 20 bucks, once again, when a Radio Shack was closing up. But what this will allow me to do is I can go put this microphone, say, up on the city hall's, the city council's desk, and then I can sit 10 feet away and just record the pieces remotely that I want. This is also good for doing interviews and also good for picking up natural sound, because let's say I'm doing a story about a covered bridge that has a brook running underneath it, and I want the sound of the bubbling brook as sort of background for my audio. I can drop this down, get it close to the water without endangering my recorder there. So this is pretty good. There's one made by Nady. Nady is spelled N-A-D-Y. We'll give you some tips on these things and other handouts, called an SP4C. And that microphone sells for about 20 bucks. You'll need a little adapter. It gives you 10-foot cable, and it's a pretty good deal there. So that's sort of the basics of the operation on this. Again, basically hit record. It's going to start recording. It gives you a red light up here. You can watch your monitors there. Make sure that you're peaking out about where you want. It gives you the running time here. Hit record again, and it stops. You can plug your headphones in. You can come back over here. You've got your play controls. You can go back. You can listen. You always want to be monitoring that audio to make sure that it's sounding good. So here's a couple of tips about interviewing. The first thing that you want to do when you're interviewing somebody is you want to prep them really, really well. You want to make sure they understand that what you're going to be using the audio for. If you're using audio for a reporter, for a standard print story, it's not going to make that much difference how you go through this. But if you're going to use it for an audio slideshow, for a video, for a podcast, something like that, you're probably going to want to take your voice out. So one of the things I will always do before I start an interview is I'll explain that I'm going to ask a series of questions. I want you to pause and think about your response before you go ahead and answer these questions. And what that's going to do is hopefully trigger them into giving you complete sentences. Tell them you're going to take your voice out. Tell them that you want them to answer so that just their voice is heard in the final pieces there. So that's the first bit of prep that I'm going to tell them. And then pay attention to that. It's really, really hard if you're asking a question and they're starting to answer it. It's very difficult to separate your voice out from others. Another quick tip, ask questions in pairs. If you ask people 2 questions back to back, they are significantly more likely to give you a complete sentence as a response. Whereas for a print story, you may say, tell me what your name is, and you're going to hear Mark Johnson. If I ask, tell me what your name is and tell me something about the hometown that you came from, they're probably going to respond, well, my name's Mark Johnson and I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts where we tend to talk a little bit fast. So that's a much more useful sort of a thing. Next tip would be patient. Sometimes if you ask a question and somebody responds and you don't immediately ask the next question, they'll start wondering, did I give the right answer? Should I go deeper with that? Because they want to fill the silence. Doesn't always work, but sometimes that second answer, when they go through and they rethink their answer, their response, ends up being an awful lot better. Holding the microphone. This is really important. You want to make sure that as you're recording, you're not moving the microphone a whole lot. So if this is somebody's mouth here, you want to make sure that you hold it fairly steady. And my tip has always been hold it 45 degrees to the side. And what that does is the letter P is the worst letter in the alphabet because every time you say it, you get a little puff of air that comes out and that gets recorded as static. Holding it 45 degrees off to the side really helps. And if you can be 4 to 6 inches away, that's going to help that audio quality an awful lot. So those are just some quick recording tips there. Hopefully those are going to help you out. We've got some vocabulary words that we used here that I want you to pay attention to. The first 3 are about file formats. So we're going to start with WMA, or the Windows Media Audio format. This is something you'll see on some of the lower end audio recorders, and it's a highly compressed, difficult to edit file format. If you have a recorder that does WMA files, you can use a program like Switch or Easy WMA to convert them into something that's easier to edit, but my recommendation is just don't record in WMA files. WAV files are the uncompressed, very high quality, very easy to edit audio files. So that's what you're primarily going to be looking for. MP3 files are compressed files as well, so they tend to be smaller in size, lose a little bit of audio quality there. We talked about a couple of different kinds of microphones. We talked about the built-in microphones that are pretty good on these Zoom recorders and some of the other high-end ones that are out there. We also talked about that little lavalier microphone, which is the clip-on microphone. And then we talked about, or I showed you, a stick microphone, which is that Radio Shack or Nady microphone there that allows you to get in really, really close. So that's the basics of audio recording there. For a task, what you should be working on is go ahead and play around with your audio recorder. First, when you get it, go ahead and read the manual on it. There's lots and lots of great information that's in there. After you've done that, go ahead and do a quick interview with one of your classmates or one of your roommates or one of your friends, just so that you can get used to practicing with the recorder. Then you can go ahead and download the files onto your computer or onto a thumb drive and get ready for the next lesson, which is going to be about audio editing. This series was produced for the Journalism Department of the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia by a grant from the James M. Cox Institute for Newspaper Management Studies.